I'm Polly Warren and welcome to the Positive Perimenopause podcast. This is the place for some positive inspiration to help you through the rollercoaster ride of perimenopause. I truly believe that with the right support, knowledge and wellness tools, you can feel your best yet, because I'm learning this life phase can be a truly exciting and often pivotal time of life. With every episode, my mission is to support and empower you to own your menopause, because it's time to start taking care of the most important person, and yes, that's you. So thank you for being here and sharing your time with me. Now let's dive in. Hello and welcome back to the Positive Perimenopause podcast. How are you all? I am back from my lovely holiday in Greece, which was really fantastic. It's so nice to get away with the family. It was just the five of us, and I really see these holidays sometimes as a regrouping of a coming together, and because we're spending lots of time together, which we don't normally, and often the first day or two can be a little bit scratchy, but actually this holiday was great. They really got on, and actually particularly my boys, they really got on really well. So it was lovely. And coming back to the UK when the weather's just as good as what it was in Greece, which has been absolutely amazing. I hope you enjoyed last week's episode with Kate Roham, all about exercise at perimenopause and how actually we need to start thinking about how we exercise at perimenopause. Sometimes we're just doing the things we've always done, and it's not always actually the best thing for our changing bodies. So if you haven't had a listen to that, I really do recommend going back and having a listen. So on to this week's episode. So today I'm going to do a solo episode with just me, and I'm going to talk about my discovery of being able to finally take charge of my mindset at the age of 48 and the positive impact it's had on my life. Plus, I'm also going to talk a bit about how I've opened myself up to all things a little bit woo-woo. Now, when I talk about mindset, I suppose what I mean is how I've learned to understand myself better, how I've learned how to let go of so much internal stuff, which has not been serving me and which has held me back. I've really learned how to become aware of what's going on and open my eyes to the fact that I'm truly the one in control of my life. And it's this awareness which has really coincided with my discovery of all things a little bit woo-woo. Now, I'm going to go as far to say, and I can't believe I'm really going to say this, but I've gone as far to say that I'm recently discovered my spiritual side. Now, this is something I haven't shared much of up until now, because to be honest, I used to be so cynical about all things woo-woo, but I've done a complete U-turn recently, because not only have I learned so much about it, but I felt the benefits of it all firsthand. Now, you maybe think I'm talking a load of nonsense, but actually, so much of what I'm going to talk about is backed in science. Since the pandemic, I really have become completely obsessed with all things energy, mindset, inner work. And although this podcast is about perimenopause, I really do think this is relevant because it's all about feeling good. And that's what we all want, right? Particularly at this stage of life, because not only do we have these physical and emotional changes happening in our bodies, but so many of us are pulled in every direction and can feel really very freaking frazzled. And mindset is absolutely the key to everything, because perimenopause is a time when changes are happening. So it's a time when we need to be able to adjust to how we're thinking about things. Plus, when we're making changes, say, to our diet and lifestyle, because we know that these changes are going to make us feel better, if your mindset's in the right place, everything is going to feel a whole lot easier. But I think it goes even further than that, because it's definitely helped me make my life feel happier. I feel more fulfilled. And I feel absolutely in control of my life, which is completely the opposite to how I used to feel, particularly sort of in my late 30s, my early 40s, during those sort of dark days of terrible perimenopause symptoms. And to be honest, when I think back to it, probably most of my life, because I just wasn't aware of the power of my mind. Now, I'm not saying that I'm an expert at this at all, because, you know, wherever you are in your life, there is always room for improvement. There's always more learning to do, more stretching beyond our comfort zone. You know, there's always room for growth. But I have been fascinated by this subject, and I really would love to share with you what I have learned so far. You know, I truly believe that we are here on this earth to get the most out of life, whatever stage we're at. It's not about simply surviving anymore. It's about thriving, to be, I always find that word really hard to say, thriving, to be our best selves and to enjoy the ride along the way. I don't know about you, but as I approach my 50th year next year, well, I'm 50 next year, but I'm still actually 49 in November. But I'm realizing more than ever that life is so short and so precious, and it's the one thing we never get back. So it's more important than ever, not only to get on top of our perimenopause symptoms, but also to live life to the full. So where did this new fascination with mindset and the discovery of my spiritual side, where did it all begin? Well, it all started really when I was trying to get over my perimenopause symptoms, when I was trying to figure out how to get back to the old me. And I started reading a load of books, listening to lots of podcasts. And I suppose it started with lots of books about menopause. And now I think about it, I've literally read every single menopause book out there. So if you ever want any recommendations, please feel free to come and ask me. But to be honest, most of them cover similar material. It's generally about what it is and the importance of diet and lifestyle. But then I got into sort of more specific books, and I got into these books, which were all about kind of what to eat. And I got hooked on them, and they're written by someone called Anthony Williams, otherwise known as the medical medium. Now, stick with me here. Now, these books made a load of sense to me at the time. Now, if you know Anthony Williams, you'll know that his story is it's a strange one, and it is very woo. Basically, at the age of 4, he heard a really very clear voice in his ear telling him that voice was the spirit of self-compassion. I know, completely bonkers. And ever since then, that voice has been with him, and he's had this gift of being able to scan anybody and see exactly what is wrong with them. And particularly people who have autoimmune diseases and issues that today's medicine doesn't yet have the answers for. And Anthony Williams, aka the medical medium, can recommend the solutions to these people, which really are always about diet and missing nutrients and supplements and things like that. Now, I was super cynical, but if you go over to his Instagram, you will read the thousands and thousands of stories of people who've had the most horrendously awful symptoms of various illnesses. And through his methods, they've become symptom-free when doctors just didn't have the answers and couldn't help. Anyway, I became completely fascinated by this, and through these books, I then read about the magic of celery juice and how it can heal many issues. And he talks a lot about this, but he talks particularly about gut issues. And at the time, I was having really terrible gut issues, really bad bloating, lots of pain. So I thought I had nothing to lose. So I thought I'd give this celery juice stuff a go. So basically, it's juicing a block of celery, a bunch of celery. I do it every morning on an empty stomach, and then you don't eat anything for 20 minutes. And guess what? My gut issues resolved themselves. Plus, I got rid of cold sores and my skin felt better. Now, you may think this is all a complete load of bollocks, which, of course, you totally are allowed to do that. But stick with me, because everything else I'm going to tell you really is kind of pretty much backed with science. But I tell you this because it opened my eyes to the fact that perhaps there is something more out there. And up until this point, I had been pretty shut off to that. Also, I just want to add, in my early 40s, like so many of you, I was doing everything for everybody else and totally neglected myself. And part of that was I'd lost who I was. I lost who Polly was. I felt like I was just going through the motions of life, feeling like every day was pretty monotonous. Doing the school run, working too hard, coming home, cooking dinner, putting the kids to bed, sitting down, watching TV, and kind of doing the same the next day. I really felt like it was a bit like Groundhog Day. Now, don't get me wrong. I fully appreciate how privileged I am. And I'm so grateful for my lovely home and my family. But I also just had this feeling of, is this it? I felt like there should be more to life. Now, part of this feeling was definitely down to perimenopause hormones changing, because when our progesterone, particularly our estrogen actually, when it sort of is falling, it really affects our mood. When we have those lower levels of estrogen, it affects our production of the neurotransmitter serotonin, and this in turn affects our happiness. So when it's low, so too is that sort of zest for life. And it also affects our dopamine levels, and this can really help, kind of is why we lose interest in the things that used to excite us. So all of that, sort of those changes combined with probably my unawareness of the moment, kind of not living life, really just trudging through life, just didn't leave me in a great state of mind. And so many of us, myself included, accept that this is just how it is, that we just have to get on with it. But I'm here to tell you that we don't have to accept feeling like this. There's another way. We haven't been put in this life to just go through the motions, to suck up a life we're not particularly happy with. That's not why we're here. I think we're here to have the best possible time and to help others have the best time and to feel good. And when we feel good, it radiates out of every cell in our body to everyone around us. I do wonder how many of us are living just a half life, a life that you're not really excited by, a life where you don't have much energy, a life where you're just getting through the days and then looking for something else to make you feel better. I know this was me. Back in my early 40s, I was definitely binge drinking too regularly because I wanted to numb life out rather than to experience it. And then obviously I felt like complete shit the next day. So here's a question for you. How many times do you get out of bed in the morning really excited for the day ahead? Now, I know at perimenopause, this can be really hard and it is much harder. But think back even pre-perimenopause. A very quick break to ask you to hit the follow or subscribe button if you haven't already. And if you're enjoying this episode, I'd be super grateful if you could hit those stars and rate it too. Thank you. How did you feel then? Was it every day? Was it maybe a couple of times a week? Or was it maybe just even one day a week? I know that pre-perimenopause, I certainly wasn't jumping out of bed every single day feeling great. But at the moment, today, I'm happy to say that most mornings, I look forward to getting up and out of bed and getting on with my day. And I put that down to my mindset, because mindset is everything. I finally come to realize the power of our mindset. Now, I know this could all be sounding a little bit wanky, and my intention is not to come over as really smug and annoying, because I certainly don't have it all figured out. But I so want to share with you the huge difference I've noticed because of all the small steps I've been consistently taking over the last few years to really nurture and nourish my mindset. And life consequently has become so much more positive and enjoyable. So I'll be sharing some of these small steps I've been taking a little later on. But first, I'd really like to try and explain to you in a way that's hopefully useful and helpful what I mean when I talk about mindset. What I've come to realize is that I'm in the driving seat of my life. For far too long, I let life do me rather than me do life. I didn't feel in control. I was being swept along and reacting to life rather than creating the life I wanted. And when we live the life we want, we feel good. And when we feel good, it means that we are fully aligned with our true self, our inner being. And that's where we should aim to get to, because then we notice all the good around us and we attract more of it to us. It's just the way that it works. For many years, I just get so stressed with the millions of things I had to do. Even all those small things which we all do every day, like the washing, feeding others. For me, it was the children, the housework, obviously then it was job. Just the little things were just so exhausting. I really didn't enjoy any of it, if I'm honest. And I really do believe I was living in a constant state of sort of low grade stress. I never turned that stress response off and just wasn't enjoying my life. It was just a kind of constantly trying to get through to that point at the end of the day where I could sit down on the sofa. How tragic is that? But now, with a more positive mindset, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm able to control my reactions better. I don't let things bother me, and I'm much more able to focus on the positive. And this has just become a complete lifesaver, particularly at the moment for me. I've got 2 teenagers in the house and a 12-year-old. I used to worry so much also about what other people would think of me. I mean, honestly, I'd love to go back to that version of me and give her a good shake. I used to worry about the most ridiculous things. I mean, one of my biggest worries was, oh my goodness, I don't think I'm a good enough mum. That's a complete load of rubbish. I was a great mum, but I just didn't give myself or allow myself that sort of positive mindset. So I'm so freaking happy that I've discovered a way out of that continuous cycle of worry and unfulfillment and misery, if I'm honest. The truth is that when you upgrade your mindset and you take control of your thoughts and have an amazing relationship with yourself, then you can essentially deal with anything that comes your way and feel good inside. And that is what all this sort of inner work allows you to do. Now, it does sound a bit woo, some of this, and it does sound a bit wanky. And I really hope you're still with me and not thinking, oh gosh, no, I'm switching off. But that's fine if you want to. But keep listening, because you never know. There might be something here which you take away and which might just nudge you into making some small positive shifts in your own mindset, which is what I'm hoping, and which in turn will improve how you feel about things. I mean, basically, I do feel happier, more confident, and definitely less reactive to things out of my control, which is basically everything apart from ourselves, because that is really the only thing we have control over. And if you can truly understand that the only thing you can control in life is you, then I promise you, life gets so much easier and you learn to respond to things instead of react. So for example, we have quite a few pairs of shoes, particularly trainers in our house. There's 5 of us. And we don't really have a great space to put them. So as a person who likes things nice and neat and tidy, I've allocated little cubby holes for shoes. But will anyone but me put their shoes in the damn cubby holes? No, they take the shoes off and leave them sprawled all over our rather narrow hallway. So many times a day, I'm picking up shoes and I'm putting them in the cubby holes. Now, this used to trigger me a lot. I mean, like properly pissed off. I would shout up the stairs very loudly, like, put your shoes in the holes. But now I've realised that achieves nothing apart from a lot of wasted energy, because I realise that no one gives a shit about the shoes in the corridor apart from me. So although I still do remind them literally every day to try and put their shoes away, because you never know, one day they might actually do it. I mean, it's only taken 20 odd years to train my husband to hang up his towel. Generally, though, I've let go of the irritation it gives me, because I realise there is absolutely no use to it. It really is a complete waste of my energy. So how have I made this shift? Well, tapping into my spiritual side has definitely been a key part of this. And this doesn't mean, for me, religion at all, because I'm definitely not religious. But I've realised the power of the mind has more impact on my life than just our 5 senses. So what I'm talking about is, I suppose I've woken up to my inner voice, my intuition. Although my intuition has always sort of been there, I've kind of really relied quite often on my gut. but it's more about kind of being aware of the universe, of source energy. And some people do call this God. I wouldn't, but some people do. Whatever you want to call it. Anyway, that part of us, I think, holds far more weight than we give it credit for. It's our sixth sense, if you like. But most people give all their attention to only the five senses, things they can see, hear, taste, touch, and smell, or at least they don't realize that there's a higher power at work all the time and that we just need to tune into it and use it to our advantage. And I've come to realize that our thoughts are powerful and they really do create our reality, and they have far more impact on how our lives work than most of us realize. So for me, a real turning point in all of this was when I read a book by someone called Dr. Joe Dispenza. And the book's called Changing the Habit of Being Yourself. Now, what I really loved about this book is that Joe Dispenza bridges the gap between spirituality and science. So there is a firm scientific backing to all of this. Now, my eldest son is a physicist in our house. I'm certainly not. But what I've learned from Joe Dispenza is that quantum physics shows us that the atom isn't actually made up of matter after all, but actually it's made up of 99.999% energy and only 0.0001% matter. So that's pretty kind of mind-blowing. Anyway, more on that later. Now, it's not only Joe Dispenza talking about this, so many others are. I've been immersing myself in podcasts and in books from people like Abraham Hicks, Deepak Chopra, Gay Hendricks, Kathy Heller, who I really love. And the message from all of them is that thoughts become things. Now, I know it sounds a bit bonkers, but we create our reality with our thoughts. I mean, you might have heard this before, but how many of us actually take this concept on board and put it into practice? It's funny because when I actually look back over my life, I've actually done this many times without actually realizing, for good and for bad. And we all do this to some extent unintentionally, many times without realizing it, because we're not controlling the thoughts we have. So, for example, when I was 26, I was working in PR in London at the time, and I decided I'd wanted to become a teacher, but I didn't really know how, as I had rent to pay. I didn't want to go back to uni, but I contacted my local primary school in London and I offered to volunteer for one morning a week to see perhaps if it was something I really wanted to do. Anyway, I went in, I totally loved the volunteering, but I really didn't know how to make the switch. I was freelancing at the time. But I really knew that I wanted it to happen. Anyway, I ended up having a conversation with the head teacher of the school I was volunteering in, and he told me that they took on a couple of people each year to do something called a graduate teacher program, where you train on the job and get paid for it. It was kind of a new scheme at the time. But he told me that applications had recently closed, so I'd have to wait another year. So I was like, oh, that's annoying. But by chance, the next week I carried on the volunteering. The next week I was working in the classroom with the class teacher, and this woman came in and she started chatting to me, and cut a long story short, I don't know what happened, but she must have liked me. But she said, do you know what, Polly, I'll see what I can do. I'll see if I can break the rules for you and get you in, because I think you'd be great. And cut a long story short, I got on the training, I ended up getting a job at the school, and it all worked out for me. And I didn't know how at the time, but it just did. So that's an example of how the universe can work for you. It really is as simple as deciding what you want, believing that you can have it, and then kind of taking actions to make it happen. And I suppose this is the bit which was massively missed out in Rhonda Byrne's The Secret. It's that kind of those consistent actions little by little. So for me, that was kind of going in, volunteering in this school, chatting to people. It's actually super simple, but it doesn't actually mean that it's easy. But it's being consistent and kind of putting in the work, and things will begin to happen. However, one of the reasons it's not as easy as it sounds is because we're all living our lives governed by old beliefs that have been ingrained in our subconscious minds literally since we were children. And what we don't realize is it's those old beliefs which are creating our current reality. And until we change the way we think and the thoughts that we have on repeat every day, then nothing's going to change. And so it's really a question of kind of brainwashing our subconscious, if you like. So for example, I used to have the belief that I never had any time. I'd repeatedly tell myself that I had just too much to do. I wasn't able to create time for myself. And I wanted to kind of, for example, go and do something like yoga. But because I was on repeat, constantly thinking, I can't do it, I've got too much to do, I'm too busy, that's what kept happening and what I kept experiencing. I was sort of stuck in that loop of not doing the things I wanted to do and constantly feeling busy, feeling like I didn't have any time. And one of the most common limiting beliefs, which I'm sure you're familiar with, which we all have, is that we're just not good enough. And if you have this belief constantly whizzing through your subconscious, it's going to stop you from showing up and doing the things that you want. And, that ultimately makes you feel shit. So all these thoughts that we have in our conscious mind, they are essentially controlled and brought about as a result of the beliefs we have in our subconscious mind. It's about literally reprogramming our subconscious mind. So we're coming from a place of positivity and thinking about the things that we want, rather than coming from a place of doubt and fear and lack and all the old limiting beliefs which have been controlling our thoughts and therefore our actions for so much of our lives. And you know what? The really great thing is about the subconscious, though, is that it will believe anything that we tell it. So we have control. We have control of it. Once we learn how, and you can learn how, we can choose to take control of our subconscious mind so that it stops taking control of us. I hope this is making sense. I'm trying to keep this simple so that it does make sense. I mean, the thing about these subconscious beliefs is that they are the reason why we do or we don't take certain actions. For example, I never felt good enough that anyone would ever want to listen to me on Instagram, for example. I had a real belief that I was no good in front of the camera or anyone. And only a few years ago, this was, I wouldn't even post one photo of me on it. But I realized that in order to share my work to help people like you with perimenopause, which I feel so passionately about, I realized I had to get over myself and I had to put myself out there. Now, it wasn't easy, but with small, consistent actions, stretching myself little by little out of my comfort zone, and then finding new evidence that I actually could do it, because we're very good at finding evidence that we can't do it. But actually, when we shift and we start seeing evidence that we can do it, we can then get that momentum and we can overcome these beliefs. And I really have overcome this belief of not being able to get in front of the camera, hating the way I look, hating the way I sound. And I've really reprogrammed my subconscious mind. Now, there are many ways of kind of uncovering your limiting beliefs and reprogramming them. And I know firsthand that coaching is a brilliant way to really expedite this process, which is something which I work with people with, but also something like EFT, emotional freedom technique, is another thing I do. I'm a practitioner of that, is a great thing. And another modality which I do, which is kind of linked with EFT, is something called matrix re-imprinting. This is so brilliant. So what we do is we find these limiting beliefs through memories, and then we go back and re-imprint them with a new, upgraded, super duper belief. So we're reprogramming your system. So those are really brilliant modalities, but also simple things like awareness is, I will always come back to it, the number one thing, self-awareness. Set yourself a timer in the day and just, when it goes off, stop yourself, what am I thinking? Am I in a downward spiral of negative thoughts? Can I think a slightly better thought? What am I feeling? Am I feeling really shit about myself, or can I actually think something better, slightly better, to kind of elevate the way you're feeling? But also things like journaling can be really useful. Hypnotherapy. I mean, there are so many different wellness modalities which help with this. So what can you do today then to start this process off? So as I've said initially, I really do think awareness, becoming aware of your thoughts, is everything. I mean, we have something, I don't know how this stat was recorded, but apparently we have about 60,000 thoughts a day. And somewhere around 70 to 80% of our thoughts are negative. That's 48,000 thoughts. And about 95% of our 60,000 thoughts are repetitive. That means we think the same negative thoughts over and over again every damn day. And most of the time, you don't even realize you're having these thoughts because they're just so automatic. And obviously, the more and more we think a thought, it eventually forms a belief. And just to add here that every time we think a negative thought, our body produces cortisol, which is our stress hormone. And the one thing we really don't want during perimenopause is any more cortisol, because it plays havoc with our other hormones and it can really aggravate our symptoms. On the other hand, when we have positive, happy thoughts, serotonin and dopamine are released, which are going to make us feel good. And we want our body craving these instead of the cortisol. So when you're in the cycle of these repeating negative thoughts, you're not going to do the things or take the actions which are going to get you the things that you want. And that can include looking after yourself, which is obviously more important than ever before at this time in your life. You know, eating the type of food you know is good for you, or moving your body, or just taking time out for yourself. And a lot of this is all about the fear and the ego. Now, when we think of ego, often people think about this as sort of big-headedness. But when I talk about ego, what I mean, it's that part of you, it's that inner critic, it's that judge, that inner judge. What I like to call it, the itty bitty shitty committee. I love that word for it, because that's what they're like, isn't it? That's what it's all these people in your head telling you all these lies, basically. If we could just live one day without our ego or our inner critic or our itty bitty shitty committee dictating everything we do, because it does, we would see a huge difference in our behaviors. I mean, whilst the ego is designed to protect us, it's actually designed to protect us from all the dangers that we faced thousands of years ago, but they don't actually exist anymore in today's life. So if we could find the courage to drop our ego a little bit more, we would all achieve so much more and feel so much better about it. I know that I've always cared too much about what people think, and that has led me to playing small, and that's all ego. And by learning to let go of my ego, oh my goodness, it's so liberating. I mean, it's obviously still there because it's always going to be, but now I promise you, I just don't care so much. I do things that scare me without worrying about the failing or being embarrassed or making a complete tit of myself, because I just don't want it to control me anymore. So the self-awareness, it's about really taking control of these thoughts whizzing around your head and just becoming super aware about what you're thinking and how you're feeling. Now, the feeling part is where it gets really exciting and a little bit more woo, I suppose. It's all about energy and the fact that we attract to us all that we are. Now, remember what I said about the fact that we are in fact 99.99% energy. So we don't attract really what we want. We attract what we are, because we are really just a load of vibrational energy. So it's not only about being aware of your thoughts, but it's also about being aware of how you're feeling and trying to feel as good as much as you can. So this really is the gold. If you can do these two things, I promise you, you will notice some shifts. So one thing I try really hard to maintain every day is to try and keep my vibration as high as possible. So this means feeling high vibrational emotions, which are emotions such as joy, love, creativity, enthusiasm, appreciation. All these are high vibrational states. Because when we're in a low vibrational state, so such as anger, fear, stress, jealousy, we're just bringing more of that to us. So I have a few tricks and things I do every day, and everyone is different. So it's about finding what works for you. But I'll tell you a little bit about what I do to try and keep myself in this sort of high vibrational state. I mean, I get up early because I like to get these things done, because I know that if I do them first thing in the morning, it really sets the tone for the rest of my day. And I know it's going to help me feel good. Some mornings, I literally roll out of bed and straight away I meditate, because our brains are in a sort of an alpha state for the sort of first 15 minutes of waking up. So it's a really good time to do that. Now, meditation, I have talked about this before, for me is a non-negotiable. This is how we connect with our inner being. It's how we connect with that sort of source energy, but it takes practice, and it really is something which, gosh, I could talk all day about, but I'm not going to today. So I always meditate, and sometimes I do it before I go and work out. Sometimes I do it afterwards. I always move my body, because for me, that like shifts the energy. It gets me moving. It makes me feel good. Then what I do is I come home and I often juice celery most days. And whilst I'm doing that, I plug in my ears, if I can, if there's no kids around wanting to talk to me, an app called Think Up, which you can record your own affirmations. Now, affirmations are really positive because you're putting positive programming into your mind. Now, affirmations have to be believable for them to actually work, but it just reminds me sometimes that, yeah, I've got this. I'm all right. I'm actually not all right. I'm bloody brilliant. And you really does help with confidence. So I do that. And then I get the kids off to school. And then once I'm in the shower, what I try and do is in my head, I'll just run through all the things I'm really grateful for, because gratitude and appreciation is one of the quickest ways to shift into a more higher vibrational state. After that, most mornings I'll try and journal, although that doesn't happen as often as I like, but I do find it really useful to get any thoughts I've got down on paper. And quite often I'll have to walk the dog and get outside, which is often good. Now, you might be thinking, how the hell do I get all of this done in the morning? And I know everyone's mornings look very different. Well, I get up super early, so I set my alarm for 5:27. I don't know why I do 5:27. I've always done 5:27. It's just what I do. And I'm probably at my desk working at about 9:30. Sometimes it's earlier, sometimes it's a little later. And obviously in between that, I kind of send the kids off to school. The thing is, this stuff works. And if I start my morning well, the rest of the day goes well. And if I don't manage it for some reason, I really notice it, and I just waste lots of time later in the day because I'm just not feeling as productive or on it that I'd like as much as I'd like to. That extra time in the morning just saves me so much time later in the day. On top of that, the one thing which I really do love to do, and actually which I did before recording this podcast, I love to put on some music and dance around like a mad woman, because that is the best way to shift your energy from sort of a lower vibrational state, if you're feeling a bit of a funk, to just having much more energy. And I even kind of recording podcasts, that energy, you'll feel my energy. So I kind of generally always do that before I do anything, talking to people, having a meeting, or it really does help. So I really recommend that. The other thing I do is that I'm extremely intentional about what I allow to enter my mind. So this includes, I suppose, the people I hang out with, what I read, what I listen to, what I watch. My husband is a news junkie and he kind of needs to keep up to date with everything going on in the world for his job. But his favourite thing to do is, particularly at the weekends, get a load of different papers and read them cover to cover. He loves it. So I do skim and scan them because they're hanging around, but I find that I have to be intentional which bits I read, because too much negativity, it just lowers my mood and therefore my vibrations. I mean, I still obviously care about what's going on in the world, but I'm super sensitive to all of the negativity. So I simply just keep my distance from it. What I do love to do, though, is listen to lots of audiobooks and podcasts. And I do this often when I'm dog walking or if I'm cleaning the house. But again, I only sort of follow accounts which post positive content, which are motivational, which are inspirational. All these things make a huge difference on how I feel about myself on a daily basis. So there we have it. I hope this episode has given you food for thought and that there are bits you find helpful and useful. All these tools really are so useful when dealing with perimenopause, because how we feel about ourselves affects how we show up in the world. And that affects those who we love. So it can only be a good thing. And what's super important is that when you have more control over how you react to situations, whether that's towards yourself, your partner, your children, your colleagues, a traffic jam, it means that your health is going to benefit too. Your body won't be completely overloaded with cortisol. This reduces inflammation, reduces your peri-symptoms, and then you'll be so much more likely to want to naturally take good care of yourself, adopt healthy habits, eat well, move your body, meditate, keep those stress levels low. It's really the start of a new, healthier habit cycle. I just know it because I'm doing it. I've switched to living to a place of joy and gratitude rather than the fear and the stress and the anxiety. It's a choice I make every day, and it is a choice you can make too. You can choose how you think about things, how you perceive the world, but it's something that needs to be practiced. But when you're in a more positive frame of mind, exciting things start happening, and life is really so much more enjoyable, exciting, and so much easier. So I'd love to know your thoughts, as always, on this episode. Did any of it resonate with you? Did you find it really annoying? Come over to my DMs on Instagram at Polly Warren Coaching, or send me an email, info@pollywarren.com, and let me know your thoughts. Well, it's been so lovely sitting here talking to you, albeit through my microphone. Have a wonderful rest of the week, and I can't wait to chat to you next week. Bye.